Hello, hello, hello. It's me. It's you. You're here with me. Um, it's the start of Ramadan. I'm not Muslim, but what does that matter? I'm not haven't been fasting all day, but I want to try some of the feasting part. Maybe that's offensive. I have no idea. Please yell at me if I'm being offensive. 'Cause I don't want to be. But I was looking at some things. What do you eat? And it was all things that I've never heard of. So I picked one that sounded fun, and we're going to make that. Also, it's about a week to St. Patrick's Day, and I've got a brisket that's been in my freezer bothering me because the top is slightly sloped for ages. That has now been transferred to thaw. Should be thawed enough to start the brine now, so we're going to get that in the brine today, and that'll be next week's. That'll be for next. I mean, St. Patrick's is next Sunday, so it's going to be in the brine from today until then. And then we'll make. I have an idea. I have an idea to make chou farci, which I'm sure I'm pronouncing wrong. French stuff with it. Sort of take the ingredients of the St. Patrick's corned beef, cabbage, potatoes meal and turn them into a chou farci. So that's the idea. That's what we're doing. So I've got this here, curing salt. In the past, in fact, we could do it again, because I think I have the other kind of salt. This stuff. New salt, which is terrible. It's potassium chloride. And the curing salt here is normal sodium chloride with some sodium nitrate. That's the curing part. So, and what you're supposed to do with curing traditionally for corned beef is use pink curing salt, which is potassium nitrate, which you can't really buy as a separate thing these days, because it is also an ingredient in gunpowder. And also you can poison yourself if you use too much of it. So it's hard to find in consumer level purchasing for those various reasons. I should get out the meat. Let's switch over to the countertop. I'm going to start by making the brine. The brine then has to cool because we don't want to boil the meat. So it's rubber band is because this is open and it doesn't have a way to reseal it. So I'm going to add a tiny dash of that to this to mimic the effect of the curing salt. And then beyond that, it's a big piece of meat, the price of which is absurd. $8 for this giant piece of brisket. Because, first of all, it was old. It was a while back when I bought this. It's been frozen since then. Second of all, because they misweighed it, so it was underpriced when I got it. It wasn't to use it or lose it when I got it. It was just miscalculated. So this is the thing. So I need a container that's big enough to hold that, plus the brine. And it has to go in my fridge and live there for a week. So I also need enough room in the fridge, so there's going to be some rearranging to do. But I need to make the brine for this now, at the beginning, because it needs to cool off. So you boil the brine to make sure everything's dissolved and combined. And then you cool it, add it to the meat, and then put it in the brine. Do I have a container I really want to use this on? Should have thought about that before I went live. I could slow cooker it. It should be something that seals. I had an old one that I used in the past, and I have since discarded that thing because it was old and beaten up. But now I don't actually have a go-to replacement. Well, I can always go with the gallon freezer bag. That should be big enough to hold that. And then I can rest it in a container so that it doesn't slosh around. This is a large-ish container. It's high-sided, so if we nestled that in there, we might just have a mess on our hands. Doing this either way. Okay, so step one: get out a pot. We're gonna come over here. Get out of. We'll move the pot. I'll move the pot to the front because we're just gonna boil it here. Then we're gonna move it to the back corner to cool. You know, this is too big of a pot. I'm not going to need that much volume. And I think the smaller one that has the spout would be easier to use. Oops. Clatter. Because this guy has spouts on the sides. So it'll be easier to pour our brine. Okay. So we've got 4 cups of water. We're using 1 cup of what is 0.5% of 1 cup. To teaspoons. It's 1/4 of a teaspoon. So we only need a tiny bit. So this new salt stuff is for people who are on a low sodium diet, which I am not. But it is the only solution I was ever able to come up with for how to fake potassium nitrate. Our new salt here has hardened. Oh, come on. So, 1/4 teaspoon of potassium chloride salt and 1 cup, yes, it's a lot, of commercially available curing salt, which has 1/4 teaspoon of sodium nitrate in it. And it's the nitrate that gives you that rosy pink color. And the potassium chloride, I don't think the potassium actually does anything. And I think doing that is a waste of time in true reality. But I've done it anyways. Then we're going to stir this together. It's not going to dissolve properly, which is why you have to cook it. Because we don't want the pile of salt at the bottom. We want this to combine. And while it's starting to heat up on us, I'm going to add our dry spices to it. Because we're making a flavored brine. So it's not just straight up salt water. Am I? Well, yeah, okay. Some mustard seed, some, I'm gonna move things, some black pepper. Doing these in any form other than whole spices is a you're just gonna get a sludge. These really want to be whole spices included here. It's just, there is a traditional blend, and I'm kind of ignoring it. There they are. Some cloves. So the corn in corned beef is, of course, referring to the salt corns from the traditional preparation of it that uses large grains of, or large salt. Bringing this to a boil, at least briefly, is also important because we're going to be leaving it in contact with meat for a long period of time, and we want to make sure that this is is sterile. It's actually already clarified quite a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and add our sugar. It does get some sugar as well. Corned beef. This one's got a cup of salt, pink curing salt, allspice juniper. I don't have juniper. Bay. I've got some bay. We can throw some bay in. No, brand new bay. Didn't even open it yet. Still has the safety seal on it. I don't have juniper berry, so I can't throw that in. A couple of bay. Allspice. It wanted way less mustard than I put in as well, but oh well. I should have whole allspice on the shelf here. Yeah, right there. Literally what it says on the bottle. Whole allspice. So normally you wouldn't get a lot of flavor from putting whole spices in water like this. The boiling is going to help that a little bit, and mostly it's because it's going to be in the brine for so long. Let's see. I should get the big sugar. the big sugar so I don't use my sugar bowl. The big sugar. So my half cup measure is actually damp, so I really don't want to put it in the sugar right now. So that's a quarter cup. And that's a half cup, roughly. I didn't really level those. And I kind of actually want to add more of our salt to it. Bookwoman, hi. Yeah, that's the easy way to do it. And honestly, that's the recommended way to do it. I'm adding a little bit more salt. Since my initial dose dissolved readily, I wanted to make sure that we are at the level of getting this really brined in here. So hot water can dissolve more things than cold water. So that's why you heat this up, so that you can really get the brine all dissolved and concentrated. Because then when it cools down, it will hold on to those dissolved solids. I did ages ago. I brined one once before, and it was good. It worked great. It's just that it's a lot of time, and it's way easier to buy it already in the brine. Although you can customize your brine when you do it at home, if you so desire. Yeah. So we're gonna let this like bubble, get to an actual boil, and then I'm gonna set it to the back and let it cool off because we can't put it on the meat boiling or otherwise it'll boil the meat. And then it's gonna sit there and cool off, and we can potentially wait until the very end to deal with that. I just wanted to make sure that the brine was at least ready for when I do eventually reach for it. I'm gonna have to make room in the fridge for it. That's another awkward element. It's up to a boil. I'm just gonna go ahead and turn the heat off immediately. Move it off the burner because that's all we really needed. Let me get rid of this. I think it's gonna be a after show. Time to tidy up the fridge a little bit. There's a lot of clutter in there. So I have an idea with what to do with this, because the traditional serving is corned beef, steamed cabbage, and potatoes. What else contains a meat, a cabbage, and a potato that is more fancy than that? If you're thinking chou farce, you are correct. Probably weren't thinking chou farce. I don't have current plans to feed guests, no. I should probably come up with plans if I want to. It's a big brisket. Anyways, that's got to cool off. So we're going to move on to the next thing, which is our actual main event today. Because Ramadan started last night. So step one here is we have to make our Bolani. Oh, you guys are over there. Okay, big bowl. We're using the Washington Post's recipe for this. Do I add wet to dry or dry to wet for this one? You add wet to dry. So we're going to do all of our dry stuff right here in the bowl. And we're going to put this in grams. So, that's the wrong recipe. Step 1, from the Washington Post. 485 grams of flour, or more as necessary. Because you need to flour your worktop and such. Now, I'm not at all familiar with Afghan food, so this is all going to be an adventure for me. Perfect. literally, you can't see it. You can't see it. The number's on the button, 485. That's sugar. We don't want the sugar. Sugar's delicious. We don't want sugar. I'm going to want to grind this salt so that it does not form lumps in our finished dough here. We've had that problem before. This isn't going to be a pasta dough, so it's not going to be as problematic. There should be plenty of moisture, but I want to make sure that we don't run into that. So, 2 teaspoons of salt. And we're going to grind it into a fine powder so that it nice. One and a half teaspoons instant yeast, and that's all of our dry ingredients. Getting through the yeasts here. 1 and a half. So yes, we are making a yeasted bread today. That only needs a little bit of work time. So I'm impressed. I'm impressed by the speed with which this professes to work. We're supposed to combine our dry ingredients so everything is evenly distributed. And we don't have sunflower oil, so we are not using sunflower oil for this. I don't know why sunflower is the specific oil. The thing is, I found this recipe is from the Washington Post for Bolani Morgh Kofta. There's another recipe for Bolani Morgh Kofta that is word for word identical to the Washington Post recipe, including the oddities like using specifically sunflower oil and putting the measurement in grams for the flour after the cups and in a really strange amount, which is 485. Like the 5 grams of flour makes a big difference. So I think they may have just copied the Washington Post recipe word for word. I'm following the recipe, at least for the bread part, verbatim, because I have never made this before, and it's a baked thing, kind of. It's not going to be baked, but it's a bread thing, so you kind of have to follow the recipe. We need water. Warm water, but not hot water. Water. I'm just going to do tap warm water. And we need oil. And my oil of choice today is going to be olive. Okay. Dry ingredients in the bowl. Create a well in the center of your mixture. Add just enough water to wet the ingredients. So that's half of our water. We're going to get a spoon for this. And stir. Well, that's not enough water. I feel like we need all the water, personally. So we're going to go for the entire water. We're going to get my tablespoon measure ready as well, since we're going to want to add a tablespoon of oil to this after the water has incorporated. Okay. Slowly add enough water to just wet the ingredients. Oh, and then it says about a quarter cup. And then later it says add the remaining water. So I didn't read that part. It probably wants to get the oil into the flour a bit more before the flour hydrates, because oil and water don't mix. And then knead until it's dry in the bowl. I'm going to get a scraping spatula. Not knead until it's dry. Knead until it's a firm dough. And then it needs to just rest for 30 minutes. Yeah, just rest for 30 minutes. It's a really short proof. So we're just gonna get this guy all combining. And I think we're just supposed to, I think it's supposed to get sticky, and then and then it firms up as it needs, maybe. Or maybe I added too much liquid. That's also possible. It does say add more flour if it's too wet. And as we know, I constantly have a hard time getting the doughs to exactly where I want them to be. I just added a pinch more flour because it was sticky, but not like crazy wet. It was just kind of like, you know, sticky. It's clearly sticking to my hand quite a lot. I want to get it out of here. The recipe, Washington Post does not provide pictures, so it's difficult to do a gauge on that front. I think we just need to knead it until it starts to stick to itself more than it sticks to me and holds together. Get some of the stuff off my hands here. It did say you might not need all the water, and I ended up dumping all the water in like a fool. Like a fool! I don't like kneading it in the bowl, even though it really wants me to knead it in the bowl. So I'm getting it out of the bowl. We're going to knead it here on the counter, the way I like to knead. It's honestly pretty close. It's slightly sticky, but it's not crazy sticky, and it doesn't really stick to the countertop very much, even after it's picked up all the flour. So I think we're getting okay as long as I keep it moving. I think it'll stick if I let it sit still. Ooh. Do it this way. I think we don't want it to sit still. Yeah, it's not really sticking to me. It's very tacky, but it's not really sticking to me. It's just kind of clinging on for a moment. Ooh, shoot. Ultimately it did stick. Okay. It's a crazy warm day today. I've got windows open. So this proofing on this should actually be pretty straightforward. Just put it in a bowl and set it aside. Let's roll up any remaining flour around the edges here. Still getting little bits that want to peel off every once in a while. The nice soft dough, it's really easy to knead. We've had some hard doughs in the past. This is a nice soft dough, really easy to handle. Stretch it out a little bit, shape it into a ball per the instructions. Get the crust off my hands a little bit. Grab our bowl, oil our bowl, pick up our ball of dough, plunk it in our oiled bowl, top of our ball of dough does not need to be oiled. The oil is so that it doesn't stick to the bowl as it expands, which means we're supposed to have not a super dry dough anyways. We're expecting some stickage based on that instruction. I'm washing my hands. There's going to be a bunch of hand washing coming up because I'm going to be dealing with some raw chicken. But I want to get this part washed up before we get to that part. Okay. Grab your kind of. You'll see. It's like a hot pocket, but not that. That one's too big. It's a filled bread. So we're gonna put a top on that and just set it aside for 30 minutes or until it is doubled in size. And it should be the end of our needs of the flour as well, because we're supposed to oil it. Turn to the dough. Ball. Oh, they are going to rest for 10 more minutes later. Okay, but that's still not that bad. We have time to think. We have other things to think about in between. We're supposed to divide it and then let the little divided bits rest. Okay. Part 3 of our project. Clean off our workspace. Clean. You can see the schmutz from the dough still on there. So I've quick thawed some chicken thighs by soaking them in the sink in water. This called for, oop, they're still frozen. They're still a little bit frozen. That's fine. They're not super frozen. They're just a little bit icy on the side that was up against the foam tray. So we don't want the skins or the bones in these. We're supposed to use, it specifically calls for ground chicken dark meat, which I don't know where to get. So instead of that, we're going to use dark meat, and I'm going to mince it up myself. But I don't think we want the skins for this. So once again, we're taking some poultry and yanking the skins off. We did this last week with the turkey. Although this time I don't have a use for the skins. I suppose you could mince the skins up with the meat. But chicken skins come off really easy. You just kind of get your fingers underneath there and you yank it off, and it just kind of comes off. Okay, I don't know what to do with chicken skins. If anybody has an idea what to do with chicken skins, you let me know. And I'm not interested in really keeping the integrity of these things either, since I just want to mince them up. So I'm going to get in there and try to just yank the bones out. We don't want the cartilage bits. We're going to pull those as well. That might be in need of a knife. And we want to save the little bits of meat that are attached to the bones, so I need a bowl. And yes, I can reach a bowl without touching anything else because its lip was poking up. So I need a bowl to save my meat. Okay, it's probably easier to go at this with a knife in general. That was a little bit, pulling the skins off is so easy with just your hands. The bones are much harder because the muscles are attached, because that's how a chicken moves around. This is a case where it would be easier to use boneless, skinless thighs, which are typically not even that much more expensive than the ones with the bones and the skins. But this was in my freezer, so we're using this because I want to use it up. We're still on a crusade to downsize the freezer, and it is paying dividends. The freezer is getting, that's cartilage piece. The freezer is getting more. Is that my blood? No, that's the chicken's blood. Our freezer is getting more spacious every time I make something. Especially today. We're getting 2 things out of there. 2 pretty large things are coming out this time. Okay. Bones, chickens, find that little cartilage nugget. That one was much easier. I think pulling him off, actually, is working pretty okay. Find these cartilage pieces, though, and get rid of them. This is probably super gross for anyone watching me just dismember bits of meat. I apologize. We're not vegans around here, and this is where your chicken comes from. I did break down a whole turkey once. That was a lot of work. Can't honestly recommend doing that one yourself. Although it's a lot cheaper. Breaking down chicken's not that hard. Turkeys are just so big. Okay. Boneless, skinless chicken thighs. And some bones and some skin. I have no use for the bones. They are going to get garbaged immediately. There's really no use for chicken bones. Suppose you can make stock out of them. Too late, they're in the trash. And I'm not going to deal with the skin today either. Skin also gone. It's a waste. I know. I'm aware of that it's a waste. But c'est la vie. Okay, how much chicken do we have? Because we're supposed to use a pound of chicken. And this was more than a pound, but it also had bones and skins on it. So we're going to carefully you know what? I'm going to wash my hands rather than fuss around with this with chickeny hands. We're going to wash my hands. Whew. When you're handling chicken, don't be afraid to frequently wash your hands. You may feel like you're washing your hands all the time, but that's fine. You know, because gross chicken goo. So what I noticed was when I picked up that bowl, I think I might have gotten some chicken goo on the bottom of the bowl. I think I might have gotten some chicken goo that got off the side of the thing. Should have done that before I... We're going to save that bowl. This is a disinfecting wipe. I'm going to disinfecting wipe here. We'll give it a proper wash a little bit later. Okay. Because I want to know how much chicken I've got. Or rather, I want to get to the right amount of chicken, which is 1 pound, 454 grams. Just so almost exactly what we had for the flour, actually. Almost the same as the flour. So bring this guy over. He's tared at 0. We're just going to put chicken in there. See how much chicken I've got. It might be all of it. It might be all of it. It is all of it. Okay. Well, now I know. Not going to wash that hand. But I am going to use my clean hand to grab our large... Actually, no. This is a good opportunity to give a test drive to one of our new knives. Since it's all steel, it'll be super easy to clean the handle. And they're all sharpened and washed and everything, so... These are the knives from the knife block. Oh, freshly sharp, like literally I took it to a professional, I took it to the deli and they put it through their knife grinder. So it's the sharpest. We'll see how well it holds its edge. But right now, razor sharp. Plastic cutting boards aren't the greatest for knives keeping their edge, so that might be a factor. Okay, so we want to mince this stuff. It's a pretty good knife, not gonna lie. Pretty good knife. I've used the knives a little bit before this, but this is going to be our first like major outing with them. They're not on my knife rack. They're in their own block, so they don't jump out at me visually when I'm reaching for a knife. So I don't instinctively grab them. Because of how the spacing on my countertop works, the knife block has ended up slightly behind where my screen is. Not completely behind, but slightly behind, which means it's slightly out of sight. And thus, it is entirely out of mind. I'm not going to throw them in the bowl just yet because I want to sort of run this through the whole stack of it once we get a nice stack. Because this knife seems to be doing a great job. This, of course, would be easier if I had just used pre-ground meat. But sometimes you don't have pre-ground meat, and pre-ground meat often also costs extra compared to the whole cut of the same meat. Ground beef is usually cheaper than any of the cuts you find in the store because the cuts they're grinding are the cuts you wouldn't be buying. The whole versions of those cuts are even cheaper. But like ground chicken, would be more expensive than the whole pieces of chicken. Because they'll probably go on about it being all white meat, which means it's all breast meat. And that's one of the more expensive bits of the chicken because everyone wants that bit, even though it's the worst bit of the chicken. It's one of the hardest bits to cook of the whole chicken, and yet it's the most popular in a strange twist. Thigh, I think, is super easy to cook. And you can get the boneless, skinless thighs, and they cook really well. Obviously, bone-in, skin-on thighs are not my favorite because you either have to cook them whole, and then eating them is a bit of work, or you have to do quite a bit more prep. And you're also, the listed weight, includes the weight of the bones and the skin, of course, which often get discarded. So they're not always actually more economical, even. You could save the bones to make stock, and you can eat the skins if you cook them the right way around. Ooh, ad snuck up on me. Surprised this chicken isn't freezer burned considering how long it's been in there. Those vacuum packs really hold it well. And they also had the skin on, which helps. Things like skins and shells and stuff like that protects meat in your freezer against freezer burn. That's a piece of cartilage. We don't want that. So if you're planning on long-term storage, getting them with the various parts still intact is better. Especially shellfish. I've talked about shellfish many times, but it also applies to skin-on meats. Although skin-on meats usually only have skin on one side, so it does not doing a huge amount, whereas the shells typically go all the way around, so there's very little exposed, unshelled stiff. I can already feel that this knife has maybe not retained its edge incredibly well. And that's likely in part because of the nylon board. Like I said, nylon's not great at helping knives retain their edges. You really want a wooden board. Definitely don't want a metal or a glass board. I've seen glass cutting boards, and that is the worst idea. You want to ruin your knives? Glass cutting board. Sure, it's easy to clean, but you end up destroying your knives on it because it's much too hard of a surface. I actually I don't know the physics behind why plastic boards wear down knife edges faster than wooden. I know that it's the softness of the wood, but plastics can be soft too, so I'm not clear on what the difference actually is. If anyone knows, chime in. Nice. Okay, that's all of our chicken run through at least into little shreds. Now I just want to kind of this way. And this is how you make ground meat without a grinder. You put it on a cutting board and you just kind of chop at it. And you end up with a much coarser mince than you would if you put it through a mechanical grinder. But I don't have a mechanical grinder. It's one of the things I look at a lot because they show up at thrift stores surprisingly often. But they're usually in bad shape, so then I don't, or they're missing parts or something. But I've found some good ones, and I just am like, is this worth it? Because they tend to be kind of expensive, even at the thrift store. I think because they're so heavy, and the people who don't know what, I've found that if the people putting the price tags on the stuff at the thrift stores don't know what they've got, they will base the price on how heavy it is. Because heavier things tend to be made of better materials, I think. That's going to be good enough. I don't need a super, super fine grind. And I'm getting a little tired in my hand. And I would like to stop with the chicken part and get on to all the rest of the parts. So we're going to take our minced chicken, put it back in this bowl. And we are going to wash everything. So bear with me. We're doing the big mid-show wash because raw chicken. I don't know what I've touched with it all except the bowl. And I know I was very careful about the bottom of the bowl that you guys have over there now. So that one should be secure. Let's see, that's okay. Soap, soap, soap. That's really the reason I want to use a plastic board for meats, even though it's not the greatest for the knife. Plastic is non-porous, so when you clean it, you can be sure that you've cleaned everything. Whereas with a wooden board, wood is slightly porous, things can get into the surface. So you often have to give it a dose of something like vinegar, something basic that's just a little, give it a modicum of sterilization. Get all this wash, 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 wash. Okay, we're washed. Could have used the food processor. Didn't really want to break out the food processor for this. Definitely an option. Okay, I was very careful with the bottom of this bowl. So the bottom of this bowl is clean, in theory. I'm not as certain about the scales, so the scales are going to go over there, and then I'm going to scrub down. I guess the bottom of the bowl's not clean? How did that get there? Literally, how did that get there? Okay, well, whatever. The bottom of the bowl, the very bottom of the bowl, is not clean. Where's my cleaning rags? Disinfecting wipes. I guess the bottom of the bowl is not clean. I legitimately thought about the food processor. I didn't mention it. I actually wanted to try doing it by hand. I've never done a full-on meat mince like that by hand. And I don't know, I'm slightly enamored with the idea of it being a little bit chunkier this time around. Definitely need to get this very clean because we are going to be doing the bread here. In a little bit. Okay. Let's keep going. That was one ingredient. The rest of them will be much easier to handle. An onion. It actually wants garlic powder. Onion. Ground chicken. Teaspoon. We need the mortar back. Because we need fresh coriander seed. Fresh salt. It just says cayenne pepper, so cayenne pepper. No turmeric? We don't need two of these because I'm just doing it all in one. Well, that'd be turmeric in this. Coriander, red pepper, garlic powder. And black pepper. And then we probably don't even need that bowl. So we're going to leave it all in here. Get it. Stuff stuck to the side of my mortar. Get it all ground up. Okay, we're gonna do a little bit of this crush and twist thing to make sure those black peppercorns are cracked. The coriander breaks pretty easily with just the circular motion of the grind. Black pepper's a little bit tougher. I probably should have got those in there first, make sure they were nice and cracked. Ah, we spilled it. Oh, it smells good. Ooh, it smells good. It's spicy. Oh, oh, let's turn the light off back here. Oh, I'm gassing myself a little bit with the hot pepper powder coming off of this. Okay, that's pretty well ground. Not perfectly well ground, but pretty well ground. And then the onion, and then some oil. So we will get our big onion sliced up. Get through the paper so that I don't slip and cut myself. And we're going to lose the whole outer layer just because there's a few blemishes and it'll be much easier. This is a big onion to begin with, so it'll be much easier to deal with. Than trying to get every little flake of the paper off. If you are willing to lose some onion, that is the easiest way to peel an onion, is to just grab the outermost proper layer under the paper and just tear the whole thing away. We need a pan for this. This pan. Okay, half. Let me see how much. It doesn't actually say how much onion. It just says a large onion, so I picked a big onion. Heat oil, which we're using enough to cover the pan. I almost want the bigger pan. We're moving up one size of pan. We're moving up one size of pan. I think we need the slightly larger pan for this. And 2.5 tablespoons of oil, which is just the standard amount of oil. Plus a little extra glug. Oil to lubricate your pan. Get our oil hot and going so that when I finish dicing up this onion, it can go right in the pan. I'm holding it in a little bit of an odd way because this is such a large onion, and I really want to make sure the layers stay together while I slice. Thus, the sort of standard claw isn't how my hand wants to do it. Although I don't do a standard claw usually anyways. And I find it easier to cut the end bit by flipping it on its side like that for the last part instead of staying upright. Whew, that's a lot of onion. Whew, we've been chopping it aggressively, so it's really getting to my face. Weepy onion. Woof, woof, woof. Okay. While I was resting, high heat. We're not going high heat, but I'll turn it up a little bit. High heat seems too high. I think I'll burn my onion on high heat, but we can go a little bit above medium. Because we're supposed to cook the onion until soft and golden. If we do high heat, we're going to end up with black and crunchy. Add all your spices to the chicken. Oh, add the chicken to the pan, then add spices to the chicken. Okay. And we're supposed to put it in a colander so it drips away any excess oil. Interesting. Interesting. So the reason I didn't want to use a food processor for the chicken is also because in this recipe it calls for a food processor to make the herb chutney, the green chutney. Oh, I'm gonna be a little weepy and sneezy from that onion and the pepper. How's our brine over here? It's still warm. So now we're over here on the stove. Our brine here is still just a bit warm. We probably could do that while we're waiting. I think we could do that while we're waiting. Oh, I know what I'll do. I got the perfect. I think I've got the perfect. Jay, hi. How's it going? Welcome, welcome. So my brine is still warm, but it's not going to cook the meat at this point. So I think we can probably do that real quick while our oil is heating up. And I just had an epiphany of the container. If I can find the container. I have a tall plastic thing that's like the perfect shape for a bag to sort of sit upright in. For a very large bag, which is what I've got. I've got a very large, this thing, and it's currently not in use. You have no idea what it is. Well, the current part of the title is we're heating up some oil to cook some onion to make the filling, to make the Morgh, oh God, what is it? The Morgh Kofta filling for our Bolani. That's what's going on here. This is oil that's getting hot for our onions. While that's heating up, I checked the temperature on my corning brine. And have determined that it is good to go. So I want to get it on my meat. We have this enormous but kind of old brisket that I got for ridiculously cheap. Key and the Legend. Hi. Hello. So you guys don't really need to see the oil getting hot. In fact, the oil is probably hot. Are you hot, oil? Yeah, you're hot. We're gonna. Yeah. Okay, the oil's hot. I knew that temperature would be plenty high. Okay. We're going to let our onion and a pinch of salt. Come over here. We're going to let our onion and a pinch of salt to help it sweat out a little bit start going on its own. I am not Muslim, no. Hi, George. No, I am not Muslim. And I was unaware of the beginning of Ramadan until I heard it on the radio this morning that it started last night. I was like, ooh, Ramadan. That's a fasting and feasting thing. What do they eat for the feasting part? So I went and did some research, and it was all stuff I've never heard of. So I just grabbed one that I thought sounded interesting, which is in the title. And I have a recipe that I'm following because I don't know what I'm doing because I've never heard of it. And in the meantime, it's about a week out from St. Patrick's Day, so it's time to get your corned beef in the brine. So we're going to put this guy in that bag, and my brine is cooled. So I'm just going to get that started. No, it was on the radio this morning, and I was like, oh yeah, holidays, because I like to do things for the holidays. I missed Valentine's Day this year here, but last year I did Valentine's Day on the show. I'm going to take the bag over to the sink so I don't spill meat juice. And we're going to get the sponge out of the way so I don't get my sponge covered in meat juice. Okay. And that is our meat in its bag, which conveniently is the perfect size for our container here. Let me wash my hands again. Okay. Uncle Stinky, hi. Welcome, welcome. I'm going to push my onions around real quick to make sure nobody's burning. No, they're fine. There's so many onions in there that they haven't even fully dried out the pan yet. So we got lots of time on the onions. Everybody's rolling in. Oh, an ad is coming up in a minute. So I'm going to get this in here real quick. So this is our brine of my hack. This is my hacked brine because I can't find pink curing salt, but I can do chemistry. So I've chemistried together my own pink curing salt, since I can't find the real thing. We're gonna squeeze the air out of that bag too. So there's a hack here as well. You zip your zipper most of the way shut, and you take the whole container here over to the sink. So you can't see this part, so you'll have to take my word for it. It's probably a good time for an ad because people won't be able to see what I'm doing. They'll just listen to me anyways. I'll try to bring it back. Get the water running cold. So I'm running water in the outer container. And the pressure on the sides of the bag from the water will push the air out of our bag. To give us a nice vacuum sealed-ish thing. Oh, it's heavy. Pour the extra water off. And I've done this in the sink just straight up, but it's so much easier to do it. And then you see, there's no, okay, there's a tiny bit of air in there, but mostly there's no air in there. And this thing is now going to live in my fridge for a week, and I'm gonna move it around every day, twice a day, to ensure that it's all nice and immersed. And that's going to be a project for a future time. Oh, and there's the ad in progress. And there's an onion that escaped. It's not great. Back over here. Okay, so we're looking for the onion to be sort of a nice light golden before we add anything else. You didn't get an ad. Interesting. Well, that was the ad break. If you didn't get an ad, then you didn't get an ad. I'm going to take the opportunity, since that is not quite done over there, to wash my scale real quick, because I think I got chicken juice on the scale, and I don't want to risk that contamination sticking with me. That sounds like a terrible time. Hopefully I don't ruin my scale by washing it with soap. Okay. And yeah, now, in terms of what I'm making specifically, this is an Afghan dish. The Muslim world is so huge that there's no way you can get one thing that encapsulates all of it. So I just kind of had to pick something, and I picked this because it sounded interesting. I didn't even specifically go looking for Afghan stuff, but this one popped up when I was doing the search. We should check on our dough. push our onions around a little bit. We're starting to get little brown edges and golden color. Probably just give that another minute before I add the chicken. Here's our ball of dough. Oop, you guys are over there. Here's our ball of dough in its veneer of oil. The dough is resting. We're trying to make the chutney. The dough is 6 equal. I need a bake. Oh my god. It's kind of an involved recipe I've picked, but it sounds so good. I really want to give it its due. We're getting out our baking sheet. We're getting out our parchment. Do we need parchment? We probably don't need... It's on the baking sheet with parchment. I think we use wax paper because we're not baking it on the sheet. The sheet is just going to store it. Is this wide enough? It's just gonna live on the sheet here as little smaller balls. I'm gonna slam my head into the dough. Hear a wet slapping sound. Okay, well, you do you. I need my lint-free kitchen towel for this next step, which isn't... Oh, yeah, there it is. I'm going to put on top of it. A lint-free kitchen towel. In fact, before I do that, I think our onions are nice and... Yeah, our onions are nice and golden. So let's come back over real quick and add stuff to this. So this can sizzle away while we roll our doughs. Add my chicken. Get it broken up a little bit. Add my... no, your wording is not suspicious. It's really hard to faze me unless you are being really deliberate about it. Add our spices. And now we need to cook this until the chicken is all cooked. And to help it, and so that it doesn't dry out while I'm not paying attention to it, we're going to put the lid on it. We're going to pop over here, and we're going to take this guy out. This is why I've been diligently cleaning my worktop, because I know I have to put my dough on it. Nice dough. It's a nice dough. I think we're being pretty basic here. Divide into 6, make the 6 into balls, put them on the sheet, rest for 10 minutes. Get out my bench scraper. Okay. Oh. No, you're fine. You're fine. You should hear the things that come out of my mouth, often deliberately. In fact, you are hearing the things that come out of my mouth. Right now, I'm talking to you. So I'm kind of I'm just kind of balling them up, and I'm doing a little bit vigorously to try to push any errant bubbles. We're going to roll these flat, so we don't have to be too crazy with them. These might be a little bit too oily again. We've had a problem once before where I oiled something that I wanted to seal. And I think we might run into that issue here again. But we're just supposed to put these on a sheet where they won't touch each other. And take your lint-free kitchen towel, put it over the top, and put them back in our proofing area. And then I'll come back and check on our chicken. And wash the oil off my hand. Do that real quick before I get any further and oil up the world. I'm not going to bother cleaning the oil off of the countertop right now because I'm going to end up oiling it in a few minutes again. But I'm going to be handling things with my hands in between there, so. So let's swing back over to the stove, open the lid, see if I've destroyed my chickens. It smells chickeny. The lid is hot. Let's want to make sure nothing's, we want to make sure they haven't stuck together in big clumps too. Smells like slightly underdone chicken thigh in here, which is a good sign. That means I haven't overcooked it, and we can continue cooking it. I'm also supposed to cook most of the liquid away, so I do want to take the lid off and ensure that this dries out a little bit. I'm just kind of making sure that, because proteins kind of want to stick to each other. That's how you get a hamburger out of ground meat, is that when you heat them, the proteins all kind of stick together. And the chicken, of course, wants to do that too. This is also hot protein. So we just kind of want to make sure that they're broken up. There's quite a lot of this stuff here, which I am fine with. I think we're going to have some delicious, whatever these are called. Whatever these are called. I forget what these are called. I wrote it in the title so that I wouldn't forget. Bolani, Morgh Kofta. Okay, we're going to let this stuff sizzle away, dry out a little bit in the pan, and do our last part, which is the sauce. Which in this case, we have 2 fresh sauces, so no long French cooked sauces today. We have 2 fresh sauces. for which we are breaking out the food processor. You know, I said I wasn't going to clean the oil off. I'm at least going to wipe it down so I don't get oil on the bottom of my food processor. Okay, and you're not supposed to really brown the chicken, so honestly, the chicken's probably just about done. But here's the food processor, which we could have used for the chicken, but then I would have had to wash it in between. And I don't know about you, I hate hand washing one of these. For this, we need mint, cilantro. This is a no cilantro house, so this is not cilantro. It's just pretending. A green chili pepper. It recommends Serrano. I don't have a Serrano. We're using a slightly over-ripened jalapeno. 1 clove of garlic. Oh, that's right. The garlic lives in the little house on the countertop now. Our little garlic house. And I wouldn't go over 1 clove for this because we're not cooking this sauce. There's nothing's going to temper our garlic. It's just going to be really strong garlic, raw garlic in there. So 1 is going to be plenty. I know there's a temptation to throw in tons of extra garlic every time something calls for garlic. Some recipes are already very garlicky without having to do that. Cut the little nub off. I'm going to throw the garlic in. We're going to move this guy to the side while I assemble the players here. I had to buy mint because the mint is not in season because it's March and mint hasn't come up yet. So I had to buy my mint. We're going to use all of this mint. Get a bowl. Well, I have a bowl. It's a lot of mint. But not the stems, just the leaves. And yes, it's a lot of mint. It's going to get minced up and lose a lot of its volume, but it's going to be a lot of mint. There's no escaping that. Oh, wild mint. And that killed them? I'm surprised. Mint is one of the most tenacious plants in the world. It's recommended you don't plant mint because it will just escape and take over everything. So I'm actually a little surprised that they managed to kill the mint. that's our mint. And then we want an equal quantity of our parsley, which is our cilantro stand-in. Which I have a lot more than I have of the mint, so we're not just using this whole thing. And we can use the stems from this part, so we shall. Maybe not the very bottoms of the stems, but the top parts for sure. I need to check on our chicken, make sure we haven't burned it. Our chicken pan is looking pretty dried out. Not burnt. We haven't burned it, but there's very little liquid. There's no standing liquid, and when I push it around, there's very little liquid left behind. So I'm going to say that that is our target. It also smells entirely like cooked chicken. There's none of that little bit of lingeringness to it. I'm just eyeballing approximately a same amount. And then I'm discarding just the bottoms of the stems where they would have dried out. Although this is very fresh parsley, so even the bottoms aren't super dried out. The food processor will more than be able to handle, because both of these say just a large handful of your ingredient, and I've got pretty big hands. So not too much more, just a little bit more. I've tried growing parsley, and I don't know if it's me or if it's the parsley, but it lives, but it's got low productivity. It's a lot of parsley. It was super cheap too. It was what? 69 cents. It's another reason I don't grow parsley. Because parsley is stupid cheap. Even now with after all the inflations, it's just stupid cheap. And I like it, and you really need it if you're ever cooking Italian food. And it's also a decent stand-in for cilantro in terms of both appearance and not flavor, but like attitude. It has a freshness to it. It has a fresh herbaceousness to it. And it's a good thing that it's cheap too, because it doesn't keep super long. This one's very fresh because I just got it, but I often end up throwing away the ends of them because they go wilty before I can get all the way through them. Kept coming, yeah, mint. I've got mint outside that I planted just last year, and it did, of course, die off at the top, but I'm waiting to see it surge back. It was in a container. I left the container outside, so it might even have frozen. We need the lime. Where did I put the limes? Are in the other room. We're not in a huge rush because that chicken needs to cool off before I can put it in our bread. So you're supposed to serve this with two things: chutney sabz and plain yogurt. However, the chutney sabz it calls for the juice of 2 limes, but does not call for the zest of the limes. So I'm going to make lime yogurt as an accompaniment. Let me take a peek at this yogurt before I commit. Yeah, that's good. It's a little bit separate-y there. Yeah, it's fine. It's just a little bit separate-y. We'll stir that in and it'll be fine. If your yogurt separates like that, you can just stir the liquid back into it, and it comes out as yogurt. Okay, I want enough that I can handle the juice of the zest of 2 limes. Because we're going to zest these 2 limes, and then we're going to juice the 2 limes into our processor with some vinegar and some water, and some salt, and that's it. But when I read, serve with plain yogurt, and I also read the juice of 2 limes, and nowhere did I read the zest. I'm like, we can make lime yogurt very easily. So I should do this the other way, where you hold it up and you that way you can see what part you're zesting instead of having to flip the lime all the time. And then you just tip it over and knock it off. Okay, this is all, so far, everything is working exactly as I kind of expected it to. Which is worrisome. Usually something goes wrong. Jay! Warder! Hi! Welcome! Back! Prime! Noise! Fanfare! I really need to make a thing. Hi, you're just in time to watch me zest 2 limes that the recipe does not call for, so I'm just making it up as I go. A peaceful Ramadan to you, Warder. Thanks for the Prime sub. It's gonna be very limey. This is gonna be the most British yogurt you ever did see. Yes, that was a dig at the British. Okay. Good enough. There's little speckles of lime oil all over the countertop, in addition to the speckles of lime zest that are on the countertop. Those are very fresh limes. We're still in citrus season, as near as I can tell, because we're getting some very, very fresh citrus around me. So we stir that in. Vigorously. And then we don't taste it now because it's just gonna taste like yogurt right now. But the yogurt will extract the oils from our limes. And it'll make this taste lime, but not sour, but it's already sour because it's yogurt. Okay. I have a board, but it's out of the way, so we're just gonna cut our limes in half over on the board. Get out our citrus reamer and get reaming. I'm not going to worry about pulp. These are already seedless. Get reamed. And in that way, we haven't wasted the zest from our limes. Of course, if you're a manly man, you can squeeze your limes by hand or crush them against your forehead or some nonsense, whatever men do. I wouldn't know. Oh, an ad snuck up on me. Hi. You crushed by hand. Like a manly man. Manly man, Jay. Oops. Spraying lime juice out every which way. I mean, if I'm squeezing it out on like a taco, I'll just do it by hand. But if I really want to juice them out like this, I do it by hand. Or I do it with the reamer. By hand. By hand with the reamer. Okay, rinse that off. Bring back our tablespoon, because we need, of all things, white vinegar. Just distilled white vinegar. 1, 2 and a half. Oh, Jay has big manly hands. Look at him lording his big manliness. No, no, I know. You're better than us. Cold water, which I'm gonna rinse my blades off a little bit. Cold water. Teaspoon is dirty again. I keep using it. No, actually, it's got black pepper on it. Teaspoon of salt. Big, soft, manly hands. We'll be right back from the sink end of the world with this, but with the seeds removed. Okay, that's him. His seeds are removed. Let's get the lid. Let's get all the herbs in there. Start by getting all the herbs in there. Yeah, and then I'm going to add stuff through the chute as we go. Get this guy in. Lock him in. Put the lid on. Lock him in. Take the chute off. Turn it on. Put it on low. And check it out. Give the old interior. Wow. Look at how warped that spatula has become. This doesn't call for any oil, which is interesting. I would instinctively, if I was making this, put in some olive oil. But this recipe does not call for any olive oil here. Just a lot of sour liquids. Okay, if I go any more than that, it's just going to be a paste. Probably already is a bit of a paste. But that's our herbs. What's it called? Chutney Sabz. S-A-B-Z. Or Z. For those of you who are British. Why do we keep talking about the British? Keep bringing up British things. Do Canadians say that? If only we had a Canadian here to let me know. Okay. Z for the last letter of the alphabet. As opposed to the American Z. Non-committal as always. I'm razzing you. Don't take me too seriously. Pro tip, don't take me seriously. Okay, that's our sauce. That's our two sauces. Here's our other sauce. I'm going to give it a taste. Mmm. Mmm. Interesting. We'll just set those guys to the side. We'll clean this off because I made another mess. But it's time for the final part of the project where we actually make the thing. It's about time we actually made the thing. Oh my god, Jay just said a thing. Oh my god. Well, try not to be too non-committal too hard. Eventually it'll come back to bite you. Okay, we are on... I keep jumping around on this thing. We are on a lightly floured surface using a lightly floured rolling pin. Roll the balls out into circles and make hot pockets. Oh, and we need another big pan, and we need... How big? I don't know how big these are going to be, so I'm going to go for the large cast iron today. If this pan is cool to the touch, then good. We're getting out the large cast iron, and we're moving the chicken there. We need to retrieve our dough balls. They have increased in size. I won't say that they have doubled, but they have increased in size. I'm going to leave the towel on them, though, so they don't dry out while I'm working. To wash that towel, it got oil on it. Speaking of oil, we're supposed to add just enough oil. We're supposed to make 6 things. We're supposed to make 6 things and then heat up some oil to fry them. Okay. It says I need flour too, so we're bringing back the flour tower. I thought I was done with it because we moved on to oil, but we're back to flour. We're supposed to flour our work surface and our rolling pin. Grab one of our balls. And roll it out, quote, as thin as a tortilla. But not so thin that it will tear when you handle it. And it wants to be a circle. Ish. It looks pretty good. It's pretty thin. I think I could get it a little bit thinner and bigger if I really wanted to, but do I want to? I'm not sure how big these things are supposed to be. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to say that's my size. I need a scooper. Take our chicken and onion stuff. Load it up. And then squish it to make sure the air's out of it. And then we're supposed to... I'm gonna fold the edge over and give it a little crimp, just for stability. It says you're supposed to press it together, but I don't quite trust it, so... Okay. And that, oop, Key and the Legend wants a moisten. At a strategic time. Moist. And I think that's what it's supposed to look like. So I've got one. We're gonna pick it up. It's actually pretty sturdy, or pretty like cohesive. Oh, that's what you order when you redeem a moisten. I drink some water, and then I declare what the water has done. Be cautious. Flip this guy right away. I think the extra resting time has given these enough time to absorb that oil that they had. We did this with calzones once, and the oil on the calzone dough prevented the seams from binding together. I think I may have overfilled that first one. I'm going to run short if I fill everybody with that to that level. I don't have any sound effects for the channel, but I can sure make sounds myself. Okay. This one might be underfilled. Well, they're all going to be slightly different. Different and unique, just like you. Just like everybody else. So strap in for a bit of this while we roll and shape these. I definitely don't. This definitely takes long enough that I don't want to risk starting to cook them while they're not all ready to go. We made these big enough that it's pretty easy to get the edges to grab each other too. I've had a problem in the past with other filled items where I couldn't get the edges to really grab, and I'd end up squishing some of the filling in between my edges. It was when I tried making actual Hot Pockets. I ended up having the filling caught in the crimp, and then it disrupts your crimp. Attica Boy says the dough is too thick. Oop, I didn't squeeze the air out of this one. Hi, Attica Boy. Do you know about the thing that I'm making? Because I don't even have pictures. We're squeezing the air out of this one on this end. If I roll them out any larger than this, I'm going to run out of filling. Let's see. That's kind of where how I've settled in on this size. It's pretty thin in the middle where the actual filling is. So this is the size of the dough ball we start with. And then it was roll it out. This was our first one. I did roll out larger. And then I kind of reined in the next one because I was afraid of running out of filling. So the first one I think I rolled out about this big. And it's about that thick. And I've got this much filling left, so I've already used more than half of my filling on 3 of my 6. So at this rate, we're going to have 5 and 1 with no filling because I don't have enough filling. So I suppose I could make 5 and just have one that's not filled. Do something else with the last ball of dough. It's much too late to make more filling. Well, it's too late to do the thing that you're telling me to do. If only you'd been here at the beginning, you could have, I don't know exactly what you could have done, because I have a recipe and I didn't know how much dough we were going to have until I got to the part where I was putting the filling in. Again, I've never made this before. It's much too late to change stuff now. We're just going to have to do with what we've got. I suppose to take up your objections with the Washington Post, which is where I got the recipe. Theirs does not look like these things are massively overfilled. They look like the filling is a pretty thin layer. Even so, following their guidance, I have not enough filling for the 6 dough balls that they've given me, unless I really skimp. that's already a kind of a meager dose for our last one here. Yeah, this is the least filled one. It's very much a meager dose. I'm sure they'll taste fine, but yeah, I think you are correct in that the Washington Post has their proportions out of whack, because there's no way, because I've got another unused ball here and we've used all of our filling. And this one is really underfilled, and I don't feel like any of the ones I did before are overfilled. So I'm calling you out, Washington Post. You have way more dough than filling here. So I guess what do we do with this last one? There's no filling left. I'm not making another whole dish. Well, we got the last one there is going to hang out while I think about it. Come up with some quick cheat filling that I can stuff in it and pretend. Let's get some oil in our pan, because we'll fry these. It's supposed to be in a large heavy bottomed skillet over medium-high heat. Just enough oil to cover the base of the pan and heat until shimmering. So it is a lot more oil than typical, but not like a deep fry level of oil. Medium-high. Ketchup, cheese, and bologna. I don't have any bologna. We have cheese. So the base version of these, because I did a little bit of reading, because I was reading about what I was making. The basic version of these is filled with potato. A potato-based mixture instead of a chicken-based mixture. We're using a chicken-based one, and I guess you would get more if you had potato. But yeah, I suppose I'm just gonna do this last one weird. This is the Afghan version. I'm making the Afghan version. This is Afghan food. I mean, it's the chicken version, but the recipe I'm following is explicitly an Afghan recipe. Tell you what, you get in my Discord and you send me a recipe, and we'll try this again. Besides, poor food is not bad food. A lot of our tastiest things started out as poor peasant food. Just because it's inexpensive. Anyways, I'm just kind of making something weird out of this one. Get rolled. Get rolled. Okay. What do we put in here? Sure. I mean, yeah, but it's calzones, but with flavors from a different part of the world, a part of the world that I'm unfamiliar with and want to explore. So I'm exploring. I'm doing cheese. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna. We're not gonna dive into a dessert thing today. I don't think. I think we're just gonna go with like something on the simple side. Because Baddick is right. These are basically calzones, but with different flavors. Okay, that's some cheese. I gotta get a thing to contain my cheese. I bought one of these bricks of government cheese. My oil is shimmering, moving on its own a little bit. If I'd known I was going to run out of filling in advance, I have some other things I could cook up, but I would have to cook them up. I think I'm just going with cheese, just a cheese-filled one. Like a cheese hot pocket. That one has air in it, for sure. I can smell the oil, which means it's definitely hot. Let's move a couple of things. Let's get a rack. No, use this one. Let's get a rack out and some toweling. I saw Ryuya. Hi, Ryuya. Welcome, welcome. let's get started. So we're going to start with the one that was the least filled, the most underfilled one. It says about 4 minutes per side, but with lots of big asterisks. You be nice, Batica boy. So this is gonna be our test one. We're gonna follow recommendations, and we're gonna see what it is. I might have to turn the heat up to keep the oil hot. There's not a lot of oil in there, but I also want to not burn them. I'm also not sure that the flipper here is the right tool. We might need the tongs as well. It's going to be a bit of a thing. It's going to be a bit of a thing, I think, managing it. The seal's holding, so that's good. So what's everyone else having for dinner tonight? Let's take a... Oops, don't splash myself in the face. That's cooking a little bit faster than I think they suggested, so we might be too hot. Our filling is cooked, so we don't have to worry about it getting cooked through. We just want to make sure that the dough is cooked. I don't really want to be biting into a bunch of raw dough. And we are poofing up a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and press us down to make sure that we're not ballooning this up. We don't want to balloon today. So you're hearing me. You're not hearing me through this. You're hearing me through that. Um, check, check. I think you're back on the main line. I just plugged it in. Oh, have we burned? Have we burned? We burned a little bit. I didn't charge my I didn't charge all my things fully last time, and I didn't realize that until I got there over there and they were sitting there not plugged in. I have a buzz in the audio. Let me reboot. Is there still a buzz? I wonder if it's signal interference from the. How about now? You're not meant to use these things plugged in like that, so I'm wondering if it's signal interference from the cord. Damn, I don't know what it is. And now I'm getting. No, come on. It's got to be signal interference from the cord because you're not meant to use these things plugged in like that. And I just forgot to charge it, so we ran out. You stop being like that. Okay. I'm doing it that way because I don't want to splash the oil. The louder buzz. Well, I can switch the cords back, but we're not going to get rid of the buzz fully at this point because I don't have any other options for cords. Cut out though. It shouldn't have cut out. It says it's got battery. I probably need to reboot the whole thing, and I'm not going to do that while I'm live. So we're just going to have to live with it for the end here. I'll unplug it when it has a little bit of battery built up. These are big. They're really puffing up a lot. I'm not going to do that. Put that back up. Okay. Huh. You know, I have noticed, and maybe I should call Rode about it, that the battery has been wearing down faster on the lapel mic. And I've been getting less than the suggested 5 hour, a bit less than the suggested 5 hour use time. So far for each one of these, I've been distracted and one side has burned, but just a bit. Well, I hope it's not too bad, because there's nothing I can do about it at this stage. Actually, I can see that there's a buzz. What if I take this? Oh yeah, it's 100% the mic, the interference from the cord. When I unplug that, I can see the buzz on the sound meter. Um, Also, it doesn't. It's not in red battery, so it shouldn't be cutting out on me. So, oh, we burned this one too. Damn it! It's because these wires are unshielded. Because they're not expecting you to have use them while it's Wait, you can't hear anything now. That one's giving me sound. Can you hear me? Or am I really quiet? If anyone can hear me, say something in chat that reflects that you've heard me ask that. So no one can hear me. I'm just silent. Is that better? How about now? Can you hear me now? Are you burned? This one's burned on both sides. Okay, we're back to being unplugged. I let it build up a little bit of charge. It charges really fast, so it charges really fast. So it shouldn't need a ton of time to build up a charge. Also, it's not. I don't know why it cut out because when I turned it back on, it wasn't in red battery. I think maybe it's cutting itself short instead of running the battery out. It's currently unplugged. The buzz is definitely coming from interference from the cord. Good to know that it does that, so I can't actually cheat and use this thing in plugged-in mode. This is a really unfortunate time for audio problems because I'd rather not burn these things. Well, if I cut out again, shout, or can't actually shout, but chime in chat. I don't even know what a ground isolator is, so no. I can say with confidence I don't have one of those. The thing is, where the audio cord goes into the receiver is right next to where the power cord goes into the receiver, so that the cords are basically touching each other when they're both plugged in. And I'm sure that's where the signal interference is coming from, because there's not even like a millimeter between them when they're like that. Which is, of course, why it's not meant to be used in plugged-in mode. And this cord that I have is just a basic. This is the one that came with it, actually. It's just a very basic thing. Interesting that the other cord caused more interference. Because the other cord is a braided, has a braided sheath on the outside. But I suppose the other cord is also carrying data, whereas the one I just showed you only does power. Like, my computer doesn't even recognize that something is plugged in when I use that cord. All it's doing is transferring power. This one looks better. Look on that side. Done. I'm worried that they're cooking too fast and that they're going to be doughy on the inside. Because each one of these has only been in here for like not quite 2 minutes, and it says they should take 4 minutes. So I've turned our heat down a little bit. I think we may be blasting them a little bit too hot. But it's very little I can do about it now. The outsides are so toasted burned on some of them that if I put them back in, we're just going to make them briquettes. So I guess we will find out together. That's the cheese one. I turned the heat down a little bit. Because I think we're cooking them too fast. This is the cheese one because the last one with the chicken filling is the first one I did that I think is the best one. So, oh. That camera is not correct. There you go. Weird. I wonder if the mic cutting out was not because of a battery issue, oops, but because of an OBS issue. Because this camera cut out too. I just wasn't over there, so I didn't notice. I think we might have a culprit in our sights. Also, I've dropped a few frames, which I barely ever do, so we might actually have an OBS issue. I know a lot of people have OBS issues. I so rarely have them that I never think of that first. I'm holding this one down a lot more than the other ones because this is the one with the cheese in it, and it definitely wants to puff up even more so. I think we had a cheese rupture because it just it's still puffing. It's still actively puffing up. Oh yeah, we definitely have a cheese rupture on the side there. Oh, and it's not even done on that side. Probably should have done this one last. This one's got cheese in it. All the rest of them are the chicken mixture we made, and the last one that we haven't done yet has the chicken mixture, and it was the first one that I put together, and I think it's the best looking one, and it was the only one that I didn't think about underfilling or overfilling, so I think it's properly filled. These things get big. These things really poof up. I will say that. I was not expect. I got this little tray because I figured that they wouldn't poof up that much, but they're poofing up. Poofing up quite a lot. Yeah, none of them. Well, I say none of them. Some of them are a little charred on the back, on one side. They're not. None of them are charred on both sides. I like this sort of dark spotting that we have going on. I just don't want them to be super dark. I need a pot holder. This pan is definitely hot. This one is ruptured though, and is leaking, and it's the only one that could rupture and leak because it's the only one with cheese in it. And it's the only one that's now done because the other side is looking very brown. So we're going to get it out of there. This one got so big. It was so small compared to the other ones when I started. It was the smallest one of the batch, and it's the biggest one now. That cheese really forced it to puff up a lot more. So this is our nicest one. So this is the one I'm doing last because I think I've learned from all the ones leading up to this one. I'm not sure. I think you could definitely bake these and they'd be fine. Frying is what the recipe called for, so that's what we're doing. But honestly, I think baking these would be easier. It's sorry, I was just throwing the towel out of the way. The filling is a very low moisture filling. You wouldn't need to tend to them really aggressively to make sure they don't rupture, which means you could get away with putting them in the oven and just letting them go. You wouldn't get this dappled outside unless you really heavily oiled the outsides, which you could do. I don't have a pizza oven. And I think I don't want a pizza oven. Pizza oven is one of those things where I definitely would not use it enough to justify it, and it would take up a bunch of space. Oh, and an ad snuck up on me. Okay, this one is cooking much slower, which is good, I think. Which is good, I think. It should stop it from puffing quite so aggressively. And also help ensure that it's cooked through more evenly. I think I had my heat too high, and it took a long time for the heat to come down after I adjusted it down a few times. We have an ad in progress, so I'm not really doing anything. Oh. Yeah, we got plenty of battery. I don't know what that was about. I wonder when we dropped those frames. I didn't think to look. Had I been over there, I may have been able to adjust quicker. Yes, it was very unfortunate timing that we had that issue pop up right when I was doing the frying. That was very unfortunate timing on OBS's part. Because yeah, the first one actually cooked longer than the ones after it because the pan hadn't quite heated up yet at that point. And then the next couple were too hot. Because it's supposed to be like several minutes per side. Yeah, okay. Also, the cheese one may have just been a straight up mistake. This one looks good. This one's looking good. I mean, good by my standard. I honestly have never seen the real thing of these, so who knows? Based on Vatican Boy's comments earlier, they're supposed to be much thinner when they're in the dough stage, which makes sense seeing them now because the dough puffs up quite a lot in the cooking. The first side of the first one before things went to heck was looking really good, and it wasn't cooking super fast. And I think it's just the heat kept building after that one. Weirdly, and I'm going to call you out again, the Washington Post. The Washington Post has one picture, and it could not possibly exist based on the recipe that they've presented here. They must have rolled theirs out paper thin. Like I think you're supposed to make these a lot smaller as well. It had me divided into 6 balls. I think you're supposed to probably make a bunch of little tiny ones. Six equal portions. Yeah, I think I really think that I should have divided each of those balls in half again and doubled the number here. Yeah, they just. I guess I'm calling you out again, Washington Post. We might have to come back and revisit this with a recipe that's actually like from a place where this food exists, and not the Washington Post. Which, this is the first time we've used a Washington Post recipe. I don't read the Washington Post, and often when they pop up as an option in recipes, when I search for recipes, I don't click on them because they have all these ads and paywalls and all that stuff. But there weren't very many recipes for this, and theirs was well written, although apparently misleading. Because yeah, even their picture looks like a much smaller thing. And the ones I've got are just massive. Well, okay. This guy's probably done. Yeah, see, that one looks great. Get him off of there. Turn the heat off. They're so big. They're so big. I think they're supposed to be like little empanada things, like that size. They're like literally half the size of one of these. That's I think what they're supposed to be. And then you would be able to roll them out more thinly, and maybe the filling, because there'd be more edge per dough because they would each be smaller. You'd be able to stretch the filling out, and then the filling would work. I don't know. I've run across a couple of recipes like this, and they're usually from not recipe sites, but like news site or general interest places or news pages or something, where they're throwing out a recipe. And I've had multiple times where there's obviously something wrong with the recipe, where they didn't test something, and they're just. What about my hot grabber? Hot grabber. Okay. I mean, that's all the cooking. So we're gonna come back over here. Check if the camera's alive. Yep. You know, since this camera cut out, and I didn't notice it, it probably cut out right when the mic did, and I bet you it was an OBS issue. I bet you. If I was a betting man, which I'm not, okay, they're kind of golden brownish. The sauce is green and the other sauce is white. So they got so big that we're not going to put them all on a plate together. We're going to go with the white square. That last one I just did looks the best still. Let's grab the very first one. Let's grab the very first one. It's a little bit oily. That one got charred on that side, but it's good on this side. It's a little bit oily on the surface. Let's find out how they look on the inside. The dough is actually still very thin. I think that probably means we cooked it through. It's a little underdone, definitely in the crimp. But I think it might be cooked through in the part that matters. So we might end up eating these away from the crust and tossing just the edge where the crimp is, because I think that part might still be doughy. Especially if it's doughy on this one, because this is the one that was initially looking like the best before we lost control. Since I have so many, I kind of want to do a tasting here and then do a plating afterwards, rather than. Nah, we'll do the classic. I'm going to stick with my classic method. Which means I should cut another one so that I can make the plate look nice. Let's take the second one. So this one has really nice dappling, and it's not burnt on either side particularly. But I think the edges might be a little soft. Again, it looks thin enough to have cooked right around where the filling is, and then this one actually might not be doughy in the rim. Huh. Well, we might have gotten away with it. See, I think the dark ones might be less done on the crimp because they were actually in there less time. They just burned because the heat was too high. I'm going to take a bite of this one so that my on the plate one has a bite. Hot. It's really hot. Oh, man, it's so good. Oh, ooh, it's really hot. Here, we're gonna push those guys there. We're gonna do one of these, and then we can have the sauces in the middle. Oh, it's really hot. It's also really spicy. Ooh, it's both kinds of hot. That'll be why it's served with yogurt. Ooh. It does explicitly say serve with yogurt. Ooh, ooh. Hold on. I gotta cool off my mouth a little bit. We're having both of our things here added to our plate. Mmm. Mmm. Ooh. Mmm. Okay. I'm gonna take photos afterwards. No, I'm gonna take photos now. I'll start talking about it while I walk over there because I wanted the bite on the plate. But oh no, my camera station is covered in vegetables. Whatever will I do? They moved here because they were on the counter, and I needed counter space today. My herb chutney is separating a little bit. I think we didn't blend it long enough, honestly. That's fine. It's really tasty. It's an interesting spice to it too, even though those are all spices I'm familiar with. I need to take another bite to give you details. They look really nice on the plate. I think Batica Boy was wrong, and I think I was wrong too. The poofing in the middle really seems like it was just the filling, like a big cavity forming, because there's not a big glob of dough around the filling. Let me take another bite and then give you my... So the crust is crispy on the outside, chewy in the middle. The filling is very rich, very like unctuous. The onions have just turned to they just completely dissolved. I'm not even the hint of a texture of an onion as I bite through it. But the texture of the chicken. But it's this really rich, savory flavor in there. And the spices, the first spice that jumps out at me is the coriander. Nothing else is really like smacking me in the face. The coriander jumps out, but then it has this strong burn that sort of builds up real slow. And that's, of course, because we put in cayenne. But I'm surprised. Cayenne is usually a faster heat. This one does not hit instantly. It takes a sec to kick in. Ooh, I think if I had tended to these properly and paid attention and made them smaller. Oh, these are really tasty. I'm glad that I went through the effort of mincing my own chicken thighs. This would not be as tasty with chicken breast, which is the only way I can find ground chicken is ground white meat chicken. And as Bookwoman said, I could have done it in the food processor to save a lot of time, but I'm glad we ended up going with the thigh in general. The yogurt, the lime yogurt. First of all, yogurt definitely needed, both in terms of the heat level and in terms of the spice level. Yogurt is really good at extracting oil-soluble flavors that you mix into it. So the yogurt tastes very strongly of lime, but it's not any more sour. It's just really lime with the normal tang of yogurt. It's such an easy way to make a quick side sauce for lots of things. You just take some herb or a zest or a something and just something bright and fresh and mince it up real fine, run it through some yogurt, call that a sauce. It's really good. It's also the tang, the creaminess and the tanginess go well with this savory, unctuous flavor we've got going on in the filling. And this is slightly greasy too, so having the acid, and I'm sure that's what this chutney is for too. We'll taste that now. Is you want something bright and acidic. We'll just put some of that right there. Mmm. You can stick eating thighs. That's unfortunate. I find the thigh to be the, and we minced the heck out of it. If you had a meat grinder, I would have thrown it in the meat grinder and just ground it up. That's unfortunate. I think the thighs have the most, like, they're the most forgiving. They're really hard to overcook compared to the rest of the chicken. But I suppose, to each their own. This was explicitly a Afghan Muslim dish I made, but I think this would be really good with pork. I think this would be really good with veal, duck, any meat that's sort of rich and fatty, but that you wouldn't mind grinding up, mincing up really fine, because I wouldn't do big pieces in here. I think having the fine mince is what you want texture-wise. But I think those sort of fattier bits. The chutney there is very herbs forward. Oh, well, that'll do it. It may well be mental, but that doesn't mean it's not real. Well, try this with pork. I know it's not traditional. I don't know if you eat pork, honestly, but I think this would be really good with something like ground pork. Or, I don't know if you can actually, you can get ground duck. I just saw ground duck at the store. I haven't ever tried it because I haven't ever seen it before. We might try that sometime as well. Duck is it's a much darker The duck breast is a dark meat because ducks use their wings a lot more. It's also a lot fattier because they have that big fat layer that chickens don't have. I think that'd be a great stand-in here. And then if you got pre-ground, you wouldn't have to go through the step of going through and mincing it all. Ooh, that might be good. But yeah, I think pork would be good. I think veal would be good. Caveat: get your veal from a reputable farm that you know about and trust, because hi, Cybertrash. You come just in time for our epic tasting and talking about what else you could do with this. Veal is very spotty. There are a lot of things that can be very, very bad about veal production. So before you partake in veal, check up on the farm that it's coming from and make sure that they are using best practices, because there's a lot of really bad veal practices out there. But yeah, most accessible one would be pork. You can get ground pork lots of places, and it would have a similar. You'd get a different flavor for sure. You'd get a different flavor for sure, but I think the same spices would still work, and you'd get that same sort of unctuousness. You could probably pull this off with beef, but it would be a very different flavor. I think this wants the lighter side of meats. These are really good. And I'm not eating them early. You're not supposed to eat until sundown, and it's dark outside, so spot on. I'm surprised at how the flavor came together on these. Let me review what the spices are. It's onion that we cooked until it basically melted. Garlic, red pepper, coriander, black pepper. And it just really jumps out at you, the spices. I think revisiting. I honestly think deep frying these might be viable as well. You'd really have to make sure they're sealed. Oh, we should, before I go, let's open up this one and see what it did. This was the one that just had cheese in it. It's real flat. I didn't get a cheese stretch. Tastes like cheese. It's not bad though. The dough here tastes like a grilled cheese. Doesn't taste like a calzone. It tastes like a grilled cheese. Like a grilled cheese sandwich. That'd be good. That needs something to go with it. It's too plain as it is. We'll try it with the yogurt. I don't think the cheese wants the yogurt. I bet you the cheese would go with the chutney though. Because the yogurt's also creamy, and in this case the cheese is bringing creaminess and cheese flavor. Try it with the chutney. The chutney is herby and sour. Mmm. Yes. I think I'm not a massive fan of this because it is kind of watery. The flavor is nice, and it's actually not as sour as I thought it was going to be based on how much acid we put in it. I mentioned that, right? The exact same recipe. I found that one too. Word for word identical to the Washington Post recipe. I'm positive they just copied. Um, so yeah, our chutney came out a little bit wet. I think if we blended the crap out of it, we could get the herbs to a sort of form an emulsion. But I think honestly, I think taking those herbs and the lime juice, drop the vinegar, drop the water, run that whole thing through your yogurt, combine these concepts into an herb yogurt. I think that would bring the best of both worlds here. Because I like the herbs that we are using, and I like the lime, and then I would keep the lime zest as well. Um, for the stuff though, we actually added water. Water, like additional water, is one of the ingredients, as well as additional vinegar. But yeah, I think actually just combining those things into one thing would give us a really nice combo result. And actually, here's a piece of our, as Paul Hollywood would say, he'd pinch this out and he'd go, "It's raw," or uh, Gordon Ramsay would shout and put bread on my face or something. Um, it's not. It's definitely undercooked around the edge where the crimp was thick, but it's not completely raw. It's just like definitely under. Um, it's not going to kill me. You know what? It is still a little bit wet though. And you really should let it rest so it can really infuse the flavors, but I'm not going to wait that long. Ooh. Ooh. This is literally just these two mashed together, but I think if you made that deliberately, that would definitely be the winner. Although, I really like this lime yogurt as is as well. It's so simple. It's such a simple flavor, but it really works. But I think if you were going to make a sauce for this, that would be the winner. I'll keep that in mind. And honestly, if the recipe hadn't come with the chutney recipe right there on the page, and then at the bottom said, also serve with yogurt, I think the sauce I would have made for this would have been more like that. I could probably squeeze drain the liquid off of this so we don't have all this soupy part, and combine that with my yogurt, and then save that. That'll be what I put in the fridge to save, because then it will infuse those flavors into the yogurt, but it won't, because this is a little bit soupy. It won't be as soupy. But I won't be able to taste that until it has a chance to infuse, which takes a bit. Ooh, ooh, excuse me. I also have plenty of just other yogurt. We didn't hardly use that whole tub at all, so we have plenty of other yogurt. I could just drain the liquid off of this and make a separate thing with all that extra yogurt. Oh, whew. This thing does definitely have a spice to it. I think, because I'm about to snooze an ad for the second time, I think we've thoroughly tasted this stuff. I really like that filling. I think I screwed up, and I blame OBS as well, because whatever that was happened right at the worst possible time. And clearly we haven't dropped it again, so... Well, although now my batteries both say red, so we should wrap up. So we should actually wrap up now, so that I don't cut out and end up silent. So let's see who's on. Right. I think we'll revisit this, because this was really tasty, and I want to make it correctly. And then Bad Boy can come back and tell me some other thing that's wrong about it. I am kidding. Let's see who's on right now. Ooh, Sal just started. We haven't seen Sal in a hot while. He literally just started, too. So we're going to go raid Salberry. Yeah, this is ultimately a great meal. It's really tasty, despite the obvious issues we've had with it. I'm very pleased, and first of all, I want them to be thinner. But also I want them to be smaller this way. They're too calzone. I think they're supposed to be small. What? Drop Sal alert. Well, you can join me with a raid instead. Well, you could watch it back on the VOD. The process was a mess, and we had a big audio issue in the middle, and things burned because I was dealing with the audio issue while they were cooking. Yeah, Sal is not yet started yet, so we can all go say hi to Sal during her intro. My audio just cut out, and then it lost track of my headset or my lapel mic and went to the onboard, and then we had to solve it. So I will be back for sure Friday.